war that began over a cub, the battlefield stood frozen. Two armies faced each other in silence, their weapons ready, but no one dared to move. At the center, the cub glowed like a living star. Its small hands stretched outward, holding back the storm of war with nothing but willpower. For a moment, there was hope. For a moment, peace seemed possible, but peace never comes so easily. The human commander broke the silence. His voice was sharp, filled with fear. "Seize the cub," he shouted. "It belongs to us." Soldiers hesitated. Some looked at Cole, waiting for his command instead. Others tightened their grips on their rifles, torn between loyalty to orders and the truth they had just seen. Across the field, the Cathar general roared, "Protect the air! Kill any human who stands in the way." The silence shattered. Gunfire ripped through the air. Alien horns blared. The ground shook as the two sides charged. The war had begun. Cole cursed under his breath. He raised his rifle, but not at the aliens, not even at his own men. Instead, he fired into the air. "Stop! Can't you see what you're doing?" But no one listened. Harris pulled the cub back into his arms, shielding it as plasma blasts scorched the earth around them. "Sergeant! What do we do?" Cole's mind raced. Both armies wanted the cub not for peace, but for power. If either side claimed it, the galaxy would burn forever. The cub looked up at him, glowing eyes full of fear. And something else. Sadness. Cole dropped to one knee beside it. "You don't want this, do you?" The cub shook its head slowly. "No war." Cole clenched his jaw. "Then we make sure they never use you." The battle raged on. Humans clashed with aliens in brutal combat. Explosions lit the field, smoke rising into the sky. The commander pushed forward, shouting for the cub. The Cathar general roared for blood. But in the center, Cole, Harris, and a handful of soldiers formed a shield around the child. "Hold the line," Cole shouted. "Protect it." One by one, men fell, but they refused to hand the cub over. Then, as another wave of enemies closed in, the cub stepped forward again. This time, its glow was blinding. Its small body lifted from the ground, floating above the battlefield. Its voice rang out, not just in words, but in every mind present, human and alien alike. "If you fight, if you kill, then I end it all." The earth cracked beneath them. Weapons shook and shattered. Armor split apart. Soldiers screamed as an invisible force pushed them back. The cub's eyes blazed like suns. No more chains, no more war, and then silence. The soldiers dropped their weapons. The aliens fell to their knees. Even the commanders, pale and trembling, dared not speak. The cub slowly lowered itself back to the ground. It looked older somehow, as if the weight of two civilizations rested on its small shoulders. Cole approached carefully. "What now?" he asked. The cub looked at him, its voice soft. "Choice." It turned, facing both armies. Peace or nothing. The threat was clear. If they fought again, it would destroy everything, both sides, all of them, forever. For the first time in the long history of blood and hate, neither commander spoke. Neither dared, because they all knew the cub would do it. The armies slowly withdrew. Humans carried their wounded. The Cathar gathered their fallen. The battlefield emptied, leaving only silence and the memory of what almost happened. Cole watched them go, his heart heavy. Harris still held the cub, who now leaned weakly against his chest. Its glow was fading again, not from weakness this time, but from sorrow. The war was not truly over. Not yet, but everyone knew the truth. It had begun, over a cub, and that cub now held the fate of two worlds. The first battle. The forest never stayed quiet for long. After the betrayal, everyone in the camp knew what was coming. The Cathar would not stop. They had seen their sacred cub in human hands, and they had seen human weapons cut down their scouts. Now, vengeance would come. Sergeant Cole stood before his squad, his face hard as stone. "They know we have the cub. They'll come for it. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, but they're coming." The soldiers shifted uneasily, checking rifles, sharpening blades. Fear was heavy in the air, but so was determination. The cub sat close to Harris, clutching his sleeve. Its glowing eyes looked around the camp, almost as if it sensed the danger too. It no longer cried, no longer acted like a helpless child. Instead, it was quiet, watchful. Night fell. The first signs came in whispers. The distant howl of alien horns, the rustling of leaves, shadows moving where no shadows should be. The men tightened their grips on their weapons. Then the forest erupted. Green fire lit the night as plasma bolts tore through the trees. The camp exploded with shouts. Human soldiers dove for cover, returning fire. The ground shook under the weight of alien warriors charging forward. The first battle for the cub had begun. Cole roared commands. Hold the line. Don't let them through. The Cathar fought like demons, their claws tearing into metal, their blades glowing with strange energy. Humans fired rifles, grenades, anything to stop them. The air filled with smoke, screams, and the smell of burning earth. Harris hid behind a barricade, the cub pressed tight against him. "Stay down," he shouted, though the child hardly moved. It only stared out at the chaos with wide, glowing eyes. An alien warrior broke through, towering over Harris. Its blade rose, ready to strike. Harris closed his eyes, but the cub raised a hand. A burst of blue light exploded from its small body, throwing the alien backward into the dirt. Soldiers nearby gasped, frozen in disbelief. What was that? One shouted. The cub's glowing eyes shone brighter, its tiny chest heaving. It had done something no one understood, something powerful. Harris stared down at it, stunned. You saved me." The battle raged on. More aliens stormed the barricades. Cole fought with fury, rallying his men. "Hold them! For Earth!" But the enemy was relentless. For every one that fell, 2 more came. The ground was slick with blood, the night alive with fire. And yet, the humans refused to break. The cub, still pressed against Harris, looked out again. Its small hands trembled, but when another alien leapt forward, the blue light flashed once more. The warrior was thrown back, armor cracking under invisible force. The soldiers around Harris looked at the child with awe. "It's not just a cub," one whispered. "It's a weapon." Cole heard the words, but he said nothing. Deep inside, he feared they were true. The aliens began to retreat at dawn, their horns calling them back into the forest. The humans stood among the ruins of their camp, exhausted, wounded, but alive. The ground was littered with bodies, both human and Cathar. Smoke rose into the morning sky. The cost had been high, but they had held the cub. Cole stood in silence, his rifle heavy in his hands. His men looked to him, waiting. Harris still held the cub, who leaned against him weakly, its glow dimmer now. It was tired, almost drained by whatever power it had unleashed. Cole's voice was low, heavy. "This was only the beginning. They'll come again stronger. They won't stop until they have it." Harris looked down at the cub, then back at Cole. "Then what do we do, Sergeant?" Cole's eyes darkened. "We protect it, no matter what." But in the forest beyond, the alien scouts watched once more. They had seen the cub's power. They had seen it turn the tide of battle, and they carried a new message back to their leaders. The sacred air was alive. And worse, its power had awakened. The war was no longer about pride, no longer about revenge. It was about control. Whoever held the cub held the future. The choice, the battlefield still smoked from the first battle. Bodies lay across the scorched ground, human and Cathar alike. The air smelled of ash, blood, and burned metal. The soldiers were silent as they gathered what was left of their camp. Their eyes were heavy, their hands slow. Many had lost friends. None of them felt like winners. The cub sat beside Harris, wrapped in a blanket. Its glow was faint now, its strength drained. Yet its eyes still shone with something deeper, something that unsettled Cole every time he looked at it. This was no ordinary child. That night, the commander arrived from the larger base. He stood tall, his uniform spotless even in the ruins. His voice was sharp. "I've heard the reports. This cub, it turned the tide of battle. Is that true?" No one spoke at first. Then Harris stepped forward, holding the child close. "It saved us," he admitted. "But it's still just a child." The commander's eyes narrowed. "A child? No, this is a weapon that belongs to us now." Cole stepped forward, his voice firm. "With respect, sir, it's not a weapon. It didn't fight for power. It fought to survive. It chose us." The commander glared. "That choice is not yours to make, Sergeant. Tomorrow, this cub will be moved to Central Command. Scientists will study it. Leaders will decide its future. Harris clutched the cub tighter. You can't do that. It's not a thing, it's alive. The commander turned away. Alive or not, it will serve our war. The soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Some nodded, agreeing with the commander. Others shifted uncomfortably, torn between orders and conscience. The cub, silent through it all, looked from face to face with its glowing eyes. It seemed to understand more than it should. That night, Cole sat outside the tent, his mind heavy. Harris joined him, the cub curled against his chest. "Sergeant," Harris whispered, "what if the commander takes it? What if they use it to win the war?" "Is that right?" Cole didn't answer at first. He stared at the stars, distant and cold. Finally, he said, "If we give them the cub, the war might end. But at what cost? It won't be peace. It'll be chains for us, and for it." Harris looked down at the cub, who was already watching them, as if listening. Its small hand reached up, touching Cole's arm, and then, for the second time, it spoke. "No war." Both men froze. The voice was soft, trembling, but clear. Human words from alien lips. Cole's heart pounded. You understand us." The cub nodded slowly, eyes glowing brighter. At dawn, the Cathar appeared. Thousands of them lined across the forest edge, their banners rising high, their horns echoing through the air. The commander ordered every soldier to the line. Rifles loaded, artillery prepared, the camp became a fortress. Then a voice thundered from the enemy line. A Cathar general stepped forward, his armor gleaming, his eyes burning with rage. "Humans, you hold our air. Return the cub or be destroyed." The commander raised his hand to give the order to fire, but before he could speak, the cub slipped from Harris's arms. It walked forward, small feet pressing into the ash, until it stood between both armies. Its glow was no longer faint. It blazed, lighting the ground around it. The soldiers lowered their guns in shock. The Cathar fell silent. The cub raised its small hands and spoke in a voice that carried across the battlefield. "Stop. No war." The humans gasped. The aliens trembled. For a moment, the world itself seemed to hold its breath. Cole stepped forward, shouting, "Wait, let it speak." The cub's eyes glowed brighter still. It turned slowly, looking at humans and aliens alike. "No more fighting," it said. "Choice now, peace or end." And with that, the ground itself seemed to shake, a deep hum rising from the cub's small body. Energy rippled outward, rattling weapons bending the air. The soldiers stared in awe. The commander's face went pale. The Cathar general dropped to one knee, eyes wide. Everyone understood. The cub was not just an heir, not just a symbol, it was power itself. And now it was giving them a choice. The message, the days passed, but the secret grew heavier. Inside the camp, soldiers whispered more boldly. Some wanted the cub gone. Others began to feel protective, almost as if the little creature belonged to them. The cub itself changed quickly. It was no longer silent and afraid. It learned to copy human sounds, soft words, even laughter. It followed Harris like a shadow, tugging at his sleeve when hungry, smiling when he smiled. Cole tried to remain firm. "It's still the enemy," he reminded himself. But each night, when he saw the cub sleeping peacefully, he wondered if that was true. Then everything changed. One morning, a transmission crackled through the camp's comm system. It was not the usual coded orders. It was a voice, a deep, harsh alien voice. Every soldier froze as the message played across the speakers. "Humans, you have taken what is ours. Return the cub, return the sacred one, or face war beyond your imagination." The soldiers looked at each other, stunned. Only a few knew the truth, but now the enemy had spoken it aloud. Cole felt his stomach turn. The secret was out. The commander of the camp stormed into Cole's tent. His eyes were sharp, his voice cold. "Sergeant, do you know anything about this?" Cole stood at attention. "No, sir," but the commander's gaze lingered, suspicious. He left without another word, but Cole knew he did not believe him. That night, the cub sat in Harris's lap, humming softly as if unaware of the danger. Harris stroked its small head, shaking his head in disbelief. "They know," Harris whispered. "How could they know?" Cole clenched his fists. "Scouts. They must have seen us." The cub looked up at him then. Its glowing eyes seemed brighter than before, almost as if it understood. It reached out a small hand and touched Cole's arm. For a moment, Cole felt something strange. A warmth, a calm. The cub tilted its head, and in a voice barely above a whisper, it spoke a single word: home. The soldiers gasped. It had spoken. Did you hear that? Harris whispered. It knows. Cole stared in silence. If the cub could speak even a little, then it was more than just a child. It was intelligent. It was aware. The next day, another message came. This time the voice was louder, angrier. Return the cub by sunrise, or your blood will cover this land. There will be no mercy. Panic spread through the camp. Soldiers demanded answers. Rumors turned into arguments into fights. Some wanted to give the cub back to avoid war. Others believed surrendering it would show weakness. The commander called a meeting. If what the enemy says is true, then someone here has betrayed us, he growled. This cub must be found. Cole and his men kept silent. But Harris clutched the cub tightly, fear in his eyes. As night fell, the cub sat quietly, staring at the stars beyond the tent's flap. Its glowing eyes reflected the sky. It looked older somehow, wiser than a child should look. Cole sat beside it. Why are you so important? He whispered. Why would they burn the world for you? The cub said nothing, but deep inside, Cole already knew. This was not an ordinary child. Far beyond the camp in the enemy's command center, Cathar leaders gathered. Their scouts had confirmed the truth: the humans had the cub. And not just any cub. It was the heir, the child of their ruling line, the one born with gifts that marked it as sacred, destined to lead. To the Cathar, this was not just blood. This was destiny. The message had been sent, and if the humans did not answer, war would follow. Back in camp, the soldiers sat restless by the fires. Harris whispered to Cole, what if we gave it back? Maybe this war could end. Cole shook his head. Or maybe they'd kill us anyway. Maybe the cub is worth more than peace to them. The cub looked up at him then, its glowing eyes calm, its small hand resting on his. And in that quiet moment, Cole realized something terrifying. The war was no longer about land. It was no longer about resources. It was about this child. The cub was no longer just a secret hidden in the camp. It had become a message, loud, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. The betrayal, the camp was on edge. Soldiers moved nervously, their eyes sharp, their tempers short. The enemy's threats still echoed in their minds. Return the cub, or face war without end. Sergeant Cole tried to keep his men steady, but even he could feel the fear in the air. Every fire that burned in the night felt too bright. Every shadow seemed too deep. Inside the supply tent, the cub sat quietly in Harris's arms. It no longer cried as it once had. Instead, it watched everything with glowing eyes, as if it understood the tension around it. Some soldiers still looked at it with pity, even affection. But others, especially those who had lost friends in the war, looked with anger. To them, this was not a child. It was the enemy's blood, a living reminder of pain. Among those men was Corporal Davis. He had never agreed with Cole's decision to keep the cub. He called it a mistake, an act of weakness. And now, with the enemy's threats pressing harder, he saw his chance. Late that night, while most of the camp rested, Davis slipped toward the tent. His heart pounded, his hands sweaty. He told himself he was doing the right thing. If I hand the cub over, maybe the war will end. Maybe lives will be saved. But deep down, he also knew he wanted revenge for his brother who had died at the claws of the Cathar. The cub stirred as he entered. Harris was asleep beside it, his head resting against the wall. Davis moved silently, pulling a blanket over Harris to hide his movements. He bent low and lifted the cub into his arms. The cub did not resist at first. It blinked up at him with wide, glowing eyes, confused but calm. For a brief moment, Davis felt doubt. But then he whispered, "You don't belong here," and carried it out into the night. The camp's perimeter was guarded, but Davis knew the weak points. He had been watching for days, waiting for his chance. He slipped past the outer line, moving toward the forest where he knew alien scouts waited. But the cub suddenly struggled. Its small hands gripped his uniform tightly. It made a low, frightened sound. Davis hissed, "Quiet!" but the cub's noise grew louder. Back at camp, Harris woke to find the cub gone. His eyes widened in panic. He shouted, "Sergeant! The cub, it's gone!" Cole leapt to his feet, fury burning in his chest. He knew immediately. "Davis, search the camp." "Find him!" Cole ordered. But Davis was already deep in the forest. He reached a clearing where shadows moved between the trees. Alien shapes stepped forward, tall and armored, their glowing eyes burning like fire. The Cathar scouts. Davis raised the cub high, his voice shaking but determined. "Take it. Take your sacred child and leave us alone." The scouts hissed, surrounding him. One reached out long, clawed hands for the cub, but the cub clung to Davis's chest, refusing to let go. It cried out, not in fear of the aliens, but in fear of leaving the humans. Its glowing eyes filled with tears, its small voice trembling. "No." The aliens froze. The word was human, and in that moment Davis understood his mistake. Before he could act, a gunshot rang out. Davis stumbled, the cub slipping from his arms. Cole and Harris burst into the clearing, weapons raised, their squad behind them. "Step away," Cole shouted at the aliens. The forest exploded in chaos. Blades clashed, guns fired, and soldiers screamed. Davis fell to his knees, bleeding, his eyes wide with shock. Harris grabbed the cub, shielding it with his body. The child buried its face in his chest, trembling. The fight was short but brutal. The Cathar scouts retreated, dragging their wounded into the shadows. The forest fell silent again, but the cost was clear. 2 soldiers dead, several injured, and Davis barely clinging to life. Cole stood over him. "You betrayed us," he said coldly. Davis coughed, blood on his lips. I thought it would end the war." Cole's jaw tightened. "You may have just started it." Davis's eyes closed, his breath fading. Harris knelt with the cub, who still shook in his arms. "It didn't want to go," he whispered. "It chose us." Cole looked at the cub. Its glowing eyes met his, filled with sorrow, but also something stronger. Trust. And in that moment, Cole realized the truth. This child was no longer just a responsibility. It was a part of them now. But far away, the alien scouts carried their report to their leaders. They would tell them the humans had spilled blood while holding the sacred cub. The war would not end. It would burn hotter. The discovery the forest was silent after the battle. Smoke rose from broken trees and the ground was black with ash. Human soldiers moved carefully through the ruins, scanning for survivors or hidden enemies. The war had been long, and every corner could still hide danger. Sergeant Cole led the small patrol. He was tired, his face covered in dust, but his eyes stayed sharp. The forest of this alien world was strange to him. Giant roots, glowing plants, and the smell of burned soil. His men followed close, rifles ready. "Stay alert," Cole whispered. "The enemy leaves traps." The soldiers nodded, stepping carefully. The war with the alien species, called the Cathar, had already cost thousands of lives. The humans were far from home, fighting on a world they barely understood. But orders were orders then. It happened. From under the broken roots of a fallen tree came a sound. A soft sound, almost too small for a soldier's ear. Not the noise of a weapon, not the growl of a beast, but something different. It was a cry. The patrol froze. Guns aimed at the shadows. The cry came again, weak, frightened, almost like a child. "What was that?" whispered Private Harris. Cole raised a hand to silence him. He moved closer, pushing aside broken branches. And then he saw it. Lying in the dirt was a small creature. Its skin was pale silver, its eyes too large for its face, glowing faintly blue. 2 tiny horns curled from its head, and its arms were shaking. It was no beast. It was no soldier. It was a cub, a Cathar child. The men stared in shock. This was the enemy's young, the same enemy that had burned their cities, killed their friends, and sworn to destroy humanity. And yet this little one looked helpless. It was crying, clutching at the ground, calling for a mother who would never come. Private Harris lowered his gun. "Sir, it's just a child." Cole's jaw tightened. His orders were clear, no enemy was to be spared. But this was not an enemy. This was a cub lost in the fire of war. "What do we do with it?" asked another soldier, nervous. Cole looked at the cub. It looked back, eyes wide, glowing with fear. But there was something else in its gaze, something almost human. He thought of his own daughter back on Earth waiting for him. The same small hands, the same frightened eyes when thunder rolled. Cole made his choice. "We take it," he said firmly. The soldiers exchanged glances. Some nodded, some frowned. But none dared argue. Private Harris carefully lifted the cub. It did not fight. It only pressed itself against him, shivering, as if it knew safety had finally arrived. The patrol moved quickly, leaving the forest before night came. Strange eyes watched them from the shadows, though the soldiers did not see. By the time they reached camp, the cub had fallen asleep in Harris's arms. The soldiers laid it in a supply tent, wrapping it in a blanket. They gave it water. The cub drank slowly, its glowing eyes watching them with silent curiosity. No one spoke loud. Everyone knew this was dangerous. If Command discovered they had taken an alien child, punishment would be swift. And if the Cathar learned humans were hiding their cub, war would become even bloodier. But still, they could not leave it behind. As the night fell, Cole sat outside the tent, staring at the stars. He thought of what they had done. Saving a single cub should have meant nothing in a war of millions, and yet deep inside he felt it. This act would change everything, and far away in the shadows of the forest, a pair of alien scouts crouched low, watching the human camp. They had seen the patrol rescue the cub. They had seen the child wrapped in human arms. One of the scouts whispered in the Cathar tongue, "They have taken the sacred one." The other hissed in reply, "Then war will burn brighter than ever." The soldiers did not know it yet, but the fate of two species had just shifted, not because of a weapon, not because of a victory, but because of mercy. A single cub, crying in the ruins, had started a chain of events that no army could stop, and history would one day call it the war that began over a cub. The secret: the camp was quiet that night. Soldiers cleaned their rifles, wrote short messages to families, or tried to sleep on the cold ground. But one tent, hidden near the edge of camp, held a secret no one dared speak of. Inside, the alien cub lay wrapped in a thin blanket. Its silver skin reflected the dim light of a lantern. Its chest rose and fell slowly as it slept. Private Harris sat nearby, watching. He still could not believe they had brought it here. Every time the cub stirred, Harris's heart jumped. He had fought in 3 campaigns against the Cathar. He had seen their warriors rip through human lines with claws and energy blades. But this little one was not a warrior. It was small, fragile, almost peaceful. Sergeant Cole stepped inside. His face was serious, but his eyes softened when he looked at the cub. "Any noise?" Cole asked. "No, sir," Harris whispered. "It just sleeps, like any child." Cole nodded. He lowered his voice. "No one outside this tent can know. If Command finds out, they'll take it away, or worse." Harris looked down at the cub. "What are we supposed to do with it, Sergeant?" "We can't keep it hidden forever," Cole sighed. He didn't have an answer. The cub woke before dawn. Its glowing eyes blinked, confused by the strange surroundings. When Harris offered a piece of bread, it sniffed, then took a small bite. Its tiny horns twitched as it chewed. The soldiers in the tent exchanged looks. For a moment there was no war, no sides, just a hungry child eating food. Then something unexpected happened. The cub tried to mimic them. It copied the way Harris drank water, lifting the cup with shaky hands. It made a soft sound, almost like a laugh, when Harris smiled at it. "Did you hear that?" Harris whispered. It laughed. Cole frowned. "Don't forget what it is." But even he could not ignore the warmth spreading through the tent. By morning, rumors had begun to drift through the camp. Soldiers noticed Harris and Cole guarding a tent more closely than usual. Some whispered that they were hiding supplies. Others guessed it was captured enemy tech. One man, Corporal Davis, grew suspicious. He had never trusted Cole. That night, while the others rested, Davis crept close to the guarded tent. He heard soft noises inside, gentle, almost like a child. His eyes narrowed. "Impossible," he muttered. He pulled back the flap just enough to peek inside. What he saw froze him. The enemy cub sat wrapped in a blanket, staring up at Harris, who was showing it how to hold a spoon. Davis backed away quickly, his face pale. To him, this was not kindness, it was betrayal. Harboring the enemy was treason. The next day, Davis reported quietly to another squad. He told them the shocking truth. Sergeant Cole's unit was protecting a Cathar child. The camp erupted with whispers. Some soldiers were horrified, demanding the cub be handed over. Others argued it was only a child and deserved mercy. The camp split into two silent sides, tension growing like a storm. Meanwhile, outside the human camp, shadows moved. Alien scouts were watching. They saw the humans caring for the cub. They returned to their leaders with the news. The sacred child lived, and the humans had stolen it. For the Cathar, this was not just any cub. It was a symbol, maybe even an heir. Losing it was a wound to their honor. Seeing it in human hands was unforgivable. That evening the cub cried out, frightened by a loud explosion in the distance. Harris picked it up, holding it close until it calmed. The other soldiers in the tent watched in silence. Some saw weakness. Others saw humanity. Cole rubbed his temples. He knew the truth. The cub was no longer just a child. It was now a secret too dangerous to keep. If command discovered it, they would punish him and his men. If the enemy learned of it, war would grow even worse. But when he looked at the cub's glowing eyes, he could not bring himself to give it up. Later that night, Harris whispered, "Sergeant, do you ever think maybe this cub is different? Maybe it's the reason we fight, but also the reason we could stop fighting?" Cole didn't answer. He only stared into the darkness, listening to the cub breathe softly in sleep. Outside the camp, the alien scouts prepared to leave. They had seen enough. One of them spoke in a low, angry voice. "The humans think they can hide the sacred one, but soon all will know. Soon the war will come for them." And as the stars shone cold above the battlefield, the secret grew heavier, pressing down on every soldier who knew the truth. It was no longer just a hidden child. It was a spark waiting to ignite a fire.